On today's show, after a big win over the Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday, the Capitals fall to the Red Wings on Sunday.
You're Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how the Capitals were riding high as they picked up a big win over the Toronto Maple Leafs. This was quite a game for the Capitals, coming off a big loss in the game before against the Bruins. They picked up a big win in Toronto, and the icing on top was Alex Ovechkin made his return back into the lineup. What went right against the Maple Leafs? A little bit later, I'll talk about how just 24 hours later, they played the Detroit Red Wings, who, listen, are not having the season that they had hoped for, have a brand new head coach. What went wrong, and did the Capitals fall into a trap game? I'll talk about that later. I'll talk about Hendrix Lapierre and how he made his return back to Hershey. But just to get it going here, talking about the highs and lows of the Capitals this season. Like I said, the Capitals came off a big loss against the Bruins a couple games ago, and they made their triumphant return back into the win column by a statement win over the Toronto Maple Leafs in Toronto. Alex Ovechkin made his return. There was a lot to love. And if we could have just stopped it right there and maybe not had a game on Sunday, that's what I keep thinking to myself. I could have just rolled into the beginning of the week feeling really great about this team and that everything was right in the world, but things fell apart in the game against the Red Wings on Sunday. But I am going to start talking about the games this weekend, and I'll start with the good news first, as I think it's always good to start on a bright note rather than just take a deep dive right into the negativity. But the Capitals picking up that big win against the Maple Leafs, securing a significant 5-2 victory that elevated their record at the time to 24-9-2 for a total of 50 points. That's good for second place in the Metropolitan Division. A team, again, I reference back to this quite often, that no one had any high expectations for the Capitals this year. And it's interesting that the bar has been raised. The bar was rather low for the Capitals this season, as the moves that were made this past summer, like, you guys got Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's no good. Andrew Mangiapane, Logan Thompson, set aside by the Vegas Golden Knights. These moves have paid dividends. So I find it funny, refreshing, all of those kind of things, that this Capitals team is one of the best teams in the NHL. And with that win on Saturday over the Maple Leafs, this win marks the 4th team this season to hit the 50-point milestone. And it's quite impressive to achieve it in just 35 games, which is amongst the quickest in franchise history. And if you want to take a look at how things can go right and how things can go wrong, just remember how triumphant and great the New York Rangers were last season. And last I checked, they were in last place in the Metropolitan Division. So, really a story of from riches to rags for that New York team. And the Capitals riding high. It's a great feeling. And a really great moment in the game against Toronto was the return of Alex Ovechkin. He got off to that great start. Had that lower leg injury, that left fibula fracture, suffered with a hit by Jack McBain. And there was a lot of, what's going to happen now? Is this the end of the season for Alex Ovechkin? Alex Ovechkin came back and was a game changer. Since his return, the Capitals have felt a surge in their offensive play. And I know it was just, it was an empty net goal in that game by Alex Ovechkin, but all things considered, It's just about who he is. And I posted a video earlier and I said that Alex Ovechkin shined. And some people said shined. That might be an overstatement. Well, he scored a goal in his first game back after missing a substantial amount of time. And also, it's not about the things that are easily quantifiable. I think that the Capitals played that much better. It was a boost of moral energy into their lineup, having the captain back in the mix. And in just over 14 minutes of ice time, Ovi fired off 3 shots and capped it off with an empty net goal, bringing him to 16 goals for the season in that game on Saturday. And, you take a look at it. It's an empty netter. And I know that those are kind of the bane of Alex Ovechkin's existence, is that, they're legit goals. They count for the total at the end of the season. But, it's oftentimes people want to sully or diminish what he's accomplished by saying, yeah, he scored all these goals, but how many of those are empty netters? And in that game, and get this, he was only 26 goals shy of breaking Gretzky's all-time record. Now, if all goes well, and it can, he continues on this current trajectory, we could see him reach that milestone. Some people are saying on March 13th in a game against Los Angeles. And Ovechkin remarked on his empty netter being one of the easier goals in his career, saying, every goal is hard to score in this league. If you want to try, go get skates and go 6-on-5. That is some vintage OV vibes, that is for sure. So talking about key contributions from the roster. And one of the things I talk about this year on the show is that it's not just the Alex Ovechkin show, that they are getting key contributions up and down the lineup. That was evident in the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Andrew Mangiapane tied the game with his 8th goal of the season. Jacob Chychrun put the Caps ahead with his 10th, lighting it on fire from the blue line, becoming one of the top defensemen in the NHL. Again, sign him up long-term. Nick Dowd also played a pivotal role, adding his 9th. He's been on fire at Scotiabank, scoring in his last 5 games. And let's not forget Mr. Bubbleface Aquarium Tom Wilson, who further extended his lead with the 14th goal, placing him 3rd on the team. This is all the offensive firepower. Additionally, Pierre-Luc Dubois continues to shine, extending his point streak to 5 games with his 22nd assist. So those perceived lackluster moves that the Capitals made in the offseason, talking about PLD, have really paid dividends. And talking about PLD, his December numbers took impressive with 2 goals and 9 assists. So lighting it on fire. PLD is just a leader, and I think that he contributes in a lot of different ways, not always finding the back of the net, but he has been doing that more as of late. Alexei Protas also chipped in with an assist as he pushes towards a potential 70-point season by Alexei Protas. All these guys, over the summer, they went into the summer as boys and left as men, and are really helping contribute to this team. And a bright spot as well in the game as of late, or more specifically when the Capitals were playing Toronto, the Capitals showed off their power play effectiveness with Wilson scoring courtesy of a Chychrun shot. And if you take a look at it, the team's defensive strategies played a significant role in that win, doing a commendable job to neutralize the Maple Leafs star players. And they do have a lot of firepower on that team. Nylander, Marner, Austin Matthews when he's in the mix, Tavares, that it is on paper like an all-star team. It's just, it never pays dividends in the postseason. The net minding always appears to be the Achilles heel of the team, with Murray between the pipes, who, let's face it, is not the Murray that we remember on the Pittsburgh Penguins all those many years ago. So tough break for the Maple Leafs, and ultimately, I don't care too much. It was a nice win by the Capitals, but it's just an interesting thing I'll comment on, that the Toronto Maple Leafs on paper seem like they should be a powerhouse in winning Stanley Cups on the regular. But talking about other players, Rasmus Sandin and the defense really hustled to keep the pressure on, to limit the Toronto Maple Leafs opportunities. And one of the things they were talking about was the net minding and how it was kind of tying the Maple Leafs players in knots. That both Lindgren and Logan Thompson have been just lights out. And the goaltending did stand out. You take a look at LT, who has been nothing short of stellar all season. His save percentage of .946, stopping 35 out of 37 shots, which was vital for the team's success. I mean, make no mistake about it. I'm not saying that if Charlie Lindgren was in the game, the Capitals would have lost, but I definitely think that LT is putting the Capitals in the best possible position to win games. All right, so coming up here after the break, it was not the weekend that we were looking forward to. Again, if it could have just been the Capitals picking up that big win over the Maple Leafs and, maybe not playing the game, let's just kind of forget about the game on Sunday. Things would have well. But the Capitals, they took a step down and facepalmed a bit as they lost to the Red Wings. I'll discuss what went wrong in that game straight ahead. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. And that was apparent. I found out I was paying for 2 streaming services I wasn't aware of. Rocket Money comes in and helps you close out those accounts you're not using or using twice, those kind of things. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So to the bad news, you're not going to win them all. That's what I'll preface this segment as saying. But one of the things was apparent is that I think the Capitals undervalued the Red Wings, a team that's struggling, a team with a new head coach. The Red Wings were ready to play spoiler. They were ready to really take it to a really great Capitals team. Because let's face it, at this point of the season, unless the Red Wings can pull a rabbit out of their hat or the teams around them start playing very poorly, probably not going to make it to the playoffs. Could happen, but highly improbable. So they wanted to do their best to just bring pride to their city. Historically, the Red Wings have had a great team for many years. Have stumbled here and there throughout their history, but all things considered, to paint them with a broad brush, the Detroit Red Wings are a storied, great franchise. So that was what it was about. And Spencer Carberry mentioned as much as well, saying that you are going to see the best out of the Red Wings tonight. A new head coach. They stumbled in their first game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were ready to prove that they were a team to be reckoned with. And that was the case as they really took it to the Capitals here on Sunday afternoon. So that was a tough thing, which ended in a 4-2 loss here. So right off the bat in this game, the Red Wings established control. They did a great job limiting the offensive opportunities while capitalizing on their own chances. And that was one of the things that was very apparent is they put the pressure on in a hurry, and the Capitals did not necessarily have the answer. And it's interesting that, when the Capitals play a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, for example, or some of the other better teams that they've had success in this season. They've done great things, but then when they play down to a team, say they're playing the Sabres or say they're playing the Red Wings, something of that nature, they struggle. Blackhawks, for example. So I think that is something that needs to be addressed. The hard part, is it a subconscious thing? That I'm not so much sure. So just over 3 minutes into the first period, Alex DeBrincat found the back of the net with a deflected goal that set the tone for the night. Things only got tougher when Lars Eller was called for a high sticking, allowing Patrick Kane to score on the PP and extend Detroit's lead. So that was the tough part of the game, was that they were scoring in quick succession, and the Capitals necessarily didn't have the answer. And you want to think, and it's easy to point to someone like Charlie Lindgren and say, well, it was his fault. And some of those goals, I'm sure he would probably want to have back. But all things considered, it was just not a really great Capitals team playing around him. And I almost thought for a moment that potentially they would try to pull Charlie Lindgren just to try to change momentum in the game, but that is not what they decided to do. All things considered, I think it was the right thing to leave him in there, just because at some point you're going to have to get yourself out of a mess. You can't go totally Patrick Waugh in the situation when they leave you in a game and air you out to dry a little bit. But all things considered, it was a rough outing by the Capitals and Charlie Lindgren in general. But we did see some life from the Capitals when Alex Ovechkin scored his 17th goal of the season. That brought the score 2-1, and a legit goal, and I hate to say good goal because that's redundant, but some people want to, diminish what he's accomplished because he scored empty net goals. That was a goal that was legit, if you will. So, but just as things started to feel hopeful, DeBrincat struck again, and soon after, Lucas Raymond added another goal, pushing the score to a frustrating 4-1 in just under 3 minutes. It was a tough first period for the Caps as they struggled with bad bounces and ineffective passes, which really played into Detroit's hands. And they were up for it. It was a game in Detroit, and they wanted to play as best as they possibly could in front of their fans. Ovi's goal was a bright spot for sure, as he is chasing down Wayne Gretzky, his 870th career goal, and showing how amazing his comeback from that broken leg has really been. That could have spelt the end of his season. If that injury had been a little bit higher or a little bit lower, or say a knee injury, it's really a lucky thing, I guess, that it was. If he had to get injured, that was the injury that he sustained. And he's really heating up, scoring 6 goals in his last 4 games, and is on track for an impressive 56 potentially this season. Now, he's just 25 goals away from breaking Gretzky's all-time record. That's something to keep our eyes on for sure. That if he could catch him this year, wouldn't that be a great story? We hope that it doesn't have to push into the last year of his contract. But as we moved into the later periods of the game, second and third period, I thought to myself, do they have it? Do they have it in the tank to have this big comeback that we've seen from the Capitals this year? Nick Dowd gave us a glimmer of hope in the third period with his 10th goal of the season, making it 4-2. So, you take a look at it, all things considered, they did have some pushback. It wasn't enough. I think, like I say, they undervalued the Detroit Red Wings, and ultimately why they got the win and the Capitals lost. So this marks his second goal in as many games. It looks like he's on track for a career-high 21 goals, Nick Dowd, that is, this season, which is impressive considering this is his 5th consecutive season reaching double digits. So you take a look at it. There are players that are reaching season career highs, those kind of things. Take a look at Nick Dowd, really having one heck of a season. And other players that are stepping up. Connor McMichael comes to mind as well. Alex Ovechkin, these kind of players that are just really excelling in this current environment that the Capitals are in. The offseason moves that were made, these players that have taken steps forward in their playing, that kind of thing has definitely been evident on the ice. But despite a late push, especially during a power play with the goalie pulled, the Caps just couldn't close the gap. Charlie Lindgren, After a rough start, faced 27 shots and made 23 saves, showing some resilience to keep the Capitals in the game. Other bright spots, we saw contributions from Radish, who grabbed assists in back-to-back games, and Jacob Chikrin, who's now tallied 3 points in his last 2 outings. So all things considered, a rough loss. You're hoping that this team can string together wins and that kind of thing. But definitely the Capitals struggled in this game against the Red Wings. But what you're going to have to do, and it's going to be made apparent this season, is that despite who you're playing, whether it's a good team or a bad team, you need to take every team seriously, or they're going to make you pay. See the Red Wings, Blackhawks, those kind of teams that in a lot of ways, they don't have a lot to play for. They just want to knock the good guys, the good teams, down a couple pegs. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about what player got assigned to Hershey. That was the question. Was it going to be Miroshnichenko? Was it going to be Lapierre? Well, we have the answer to that question. I'll discuss next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day, the best way that you can help grow the YouTube channel is to subscribe, follow, comment, all of those things. It really helps grow the channel, and I sure do appreciate it. All right, in this next segment here, we're going to talk about the player on the third line that got sent to Hershey. We found out today was Hendrix Lapierre. And let's be clear here, he is not having the season that he had hoped for, that the Capitals had hoped for. The question that I have is how many opportunities is Hendrix Lapierre going to be given before the Capitals move on from him via trade, something of that nature. I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I wouldn't be too surprised if you see Hendrix Lapierre on the move at some point this season. And, some people are quick to say, hey, Dan, don't be too hard on the kid. He's still young. Okay, how many years and how many seasons are you willing to invest in a player that, when given his opportunity on a regular basis, fails to meet expectations? That is what Hendrix Lapierre has done. I think that in a lot of ways, the Capitals were hoping that he would have the same trajectory of a player like Connor McMichael. And to be fair, Connor McMichael is definitely taking his career to the next level this season. But it's sustained. He has played great this whole season. We have not seen true greatness from Hendrix Lapierre this year. MVP, Calder Cup, Jack Butterfield Award, all of those things. What have you done for me lately? Not a lot this year for the Capitals. So talking about the move and the corresponding move, Lars Eller coming off injured reserve, the Capitals had a tough choice to make. It was either going to be Lapierre or Ivan Miroshnichenko. All things considered, if I'm going to weigh it out on a scale, I know that Miro stumbled in the last 2 games, but all things considered, I think has a better chance at helping out the Capitals. Ultimately, they decided to reassign Lapierre after what's been a challenging start for him this season. So he's going to get another crack with the Bears, ostensibly going to get a whole lot more playing time. That should help him grow his game, at least on paper. According to the report here, the Caps have officially activated Eller and sent Lapierre to the Bears. This move is aimed at helping him regain what we saw from him last season. Also the AHL playoffs, that kind of thing. Something that we have not seen from him this year. This year, he's 22 years old, has been struggling to find his footing with only 3 assists and a -3 rating over 27 games. And, that was the question earlier. It's Vrana, it's Lapierre. What's going on here? Why is Lapierre getting so many opportunities over Vrana? But, we saw that. Well, the short answer is the Capitals were winning, and I don't think they wanted to mess up the chemistry of the team. And then when the Capitals faltered a bit, that presented an opportunity for Vrana. And of course, he has seized that opportunity and made the most of it. Now, considering the Capitals' offensive firepower, it's surprising he hasn't been able to contribute more. On paper, that third line you think would have been better. It's a line that has featured Mangiapane, Lars Eller. Originally it was slated to have Protas down there. We saw, different players filter through there. But ultimately, the raw potential is there with Lars Eller at center. Mangiapane playing down there. On paper, you think it would definitely be a match made in heaven. So going back to Hershey might, and I'm going to go ahead and say might be what the doctor ordered for his career. If not, depending on what Hershey does, depending on how he plays in Hershey, again, how many times you're going to try to retread that tire. So there is a possibility he could be getting top 6 minutes, which would help him regain his confidence. At the end of the day, I think that's what it's about. It's about shattered confidence. He knows he's not playing well, and sometimes that negativity snowball gets bigger and bigger the worse that you play. See Anthony Mantha from a couple years ago, and see what he did last year in a contract year. You saw his game grow because he was scoring goals. Now, on the flip side of that is Ivan Miroshnichenko, again, painting it with a broad brush in his time with his call-up after Ovechkin got injured. Pretty well. A bit of a stumble in the last couple of games that he played, but ultimately worth a better look, a longer look. He was called up in late November, as I said, after Ovi got injured, and is sticking around as an extra player. While we could definitely benefit from the AHL playing time, his performance has earned him more chances on the NHL team. So far this season, he has 4 points in 15 games and has shown off his two-way capabilities. And I think he has really thrived when played on the fourth line with Dowd and Duhaime or Radish or whatever the case might be. I think that Nick Dowd is the quarterback. He is the guy that stirs the drink, if you will, on that fourth line. And I think that he's learned a lot how to shut down some big players on the opposing team. So you take a look at it, it's going to be tough. There's upcoming decisions with Sonny Milano's return on the horizon. The team will have some decisions to make on the roster. Sonny Milano, another guy. Is he going to be given another opportunity? I know that there is this injury that is still quite mysterious. Sometimes these players that are injured, sometimes they say that just for juggling the roster. Ultimately, I know the Capitals were none too pleased with Sonny Milano's performance. So you take a look at it, a lot of questions. Lapierre, I'm just going to say it. If I found out tomorrow that Hendrix Lapierre got traded, I'm not going to be surprised in one bit. If Sonny Milano, if he got dealt or waived or whatever the case might be, would be surprised 0%. That's just where we're at. I think you need to kind of separate, see the cream that rises to the surface. Is Lapierre that cream? And, just because on the back of his hockey card and his history, he should be really good. But he hasn't been really good. So that's the question. How many opportunities do you give him? Sonny Milano, if I take a look back, when he first came to this team, let's not forget he was originally slated to be on the AHL Hershey Bears. My thoughts on him originally were, has a good nose for the puck, that kind of thing. A very kind of hot and cold player. We saw glimpses last season of greatness from Sonny Milano. Not so much this year. But at the end of the day, tough questions for Chris Patrick, these kind of things to, who's going to take off? There's injuries, that kind of thing, it's some of those questions will be answered just how the Capitals play, A, B, injuries, those kind of things, but tough questions that need to be answered at some point. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals and making it your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.